Hello everyone, this is AJ and welcome back to the channel. Welcome to my latest episode of my review series of Star Trek Deep Space Nine Revisited. So the episode that I'm going to be talking about today is Q-less. Q-less. So let's get into it.
In the making.
We'll hit the wormhole in 18 minutes.
Losing atmosphere! Puts the station on a collision course for disaster.
I just saw Q on the promenade.
Q here? All gone. Bring them back, Q. Now!
Is Q up to his old tricks?
My advice to you is to evacuate now.
Or is the destiny of Deep Space Nine even out of his control? On the next exciting episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
Okay, yeah, I'm really enjoying my revisit of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. I love this series. It is my favourite Star Trek series of all. Yes, topping any other Star Trek Deep Space, TNG even, the original series. This is Star Trek for me. This is my favourite. I'm not knocking the other series. They're fantastic. Just for me, this one is the icing on the cake for Star Trek. I just adore it and adore the cast. It's wonderful stuff. Now, if you want to hit the subscribe button, I am going to be reviewing all of the Star Trek Deep Space Nine, giving you my thoughts on them. And that'll be quite interesting because I remember back in the day when the TNG writers primarily took over writing of Star Trek Deep Space Nine back in the day, and I don't think I quite liked it. Now, it's been a long time since I've revisited Star Trek Deep Space Nine, probably over a decade, I'll be honest. So it's great getting back into it. So this episode first aired on February the 8th of 1993. 1993, nearly 30 years ago. Jesus. Joe, I feel old now. I truly feel old. And this episode here came a story from Hannah Louise Shearer. And this would be her final writing on Star Trek, TNG or Deep Space Nine. But the teleplay was written by Robert Hewitt Wolfe, and him writing this episode actually led to him being brought into the writing team on Deep Space Nine, one of the primary writing team members. The episode was directed by Paul Lynch, whose name you've probably heard before, because it has appeared in a couple of episodes earlier down the line. Now, Paul Lynch for me is a name that I always recognise because I used to work with a fella around this juncture in time by the name of Paul Lynch. Not this Paul Lynch, obviously. Another Paul Lynch. But I always remember the name because of that. So this episode sees the return of John Delancey in the fan favourite character of Q. And also Jennifer Hetrick returns as the character of Vash. Now, Vash, you may remember, appeared on Star Trek: The Next Generation. She was kind of a love interest for Picard. She was an antiques dealer, an archaeologist, all this sort of a thing. And in her last appearance, she went off with Q. She was in the "I'm Not a Merry Man" episode.
I protest. I am not a merry man.
The Robin Hood episode of Star Trek. Next Generation. She was great in it. So this episode here starts with her coming to the station. She's found in the Gamma Quadrant. A ship is brought back through one of the runabouts with some of the crew members on board, Dax and that, and they're having trouble getting into it, but they read 3 life signs when there's only meant to be 2. And one of them is Vash. And Miles O'Brien instantly recognises her and strikes up conversation with her. And she's been in the Gamma Quadrant for the past couple of years, which intrigues Cisco and the like and Starfleet because, you know, how did she get there? What's she been doing? She's been visiting other planets over there. And they're very curious to find out what she knows. But we come to find out that Q has come with her. He's come along with her because he's still got an interest in Vash. But Vash is done with him. She's got no interest in Q anymore. So it's kind of like this love interest breaking apart and this sort of a thing. As the story progresses, we find out that Vash has brought some artefacts with her on board the station. Several different ones, statues, some jewellery, and this this glowy type of crystalline thing. And this obviously gets Quark interested. So Quark sets up a buyers for these items so they can bid an auction on these items, if it were. So they can bid on them and sell to the highest price, with Quark getting some of the profits and Vash taking the rest, leading to a fantastic scene where Vash essentially seduces Quark by rubbing his ears to get him to keep lowering and lowering the price of how much he's prepared to take, and she gets him down to about 22%, and he starts off with a 50-50 break. Fantastic scene. Q's there, obviously, he's popping up and that, but he doesn't put the station in any sort of peril or anything like this, but he is intrigued by Sisko, so much so that he gets into a boxing match with Sisko. He dresses them up like oldie-timey boxers, and he gets surprised when Sisko punches him and whacks him out.
I'll wager 5 bars of latinum on Sisko.
You're on.
Fight back! This is supposed to be brutal. You can pay me out of your profits from the auction.
And he said Picard would never do this, at which point Sisko says, I am not Picard.
You hit me. Picard never hit me. I'm not Picard. Indeed not. You're much easier to provoke. How fortunate for me.
Now, originally, this was actually meant to be a Vash-centric episode without Q, but they saw the opportunity to bring Q into it. So Q isn't really a primary part of the story or the goings-on. He's just there to annoy Vash, to annoy everyone else. And this was a good episode for them to play around with and show the differences between Commander Sisko and Captain Picard. These are two different characters who handle things very differently. And it is fantastic. Vash herself, Jennifer Hetrick, she just steals every scene that she's in. She's so comfortable in this character. She's so likeable. She oozes a sort of sex appeal as well, and it's just fantastic. She commands the screen when she's on. This character, if this character had become a primary member of a Star Trek series, it would have been fantastic. I mean, they should have brought her into Voyager or something and had her on board when Voyager went flung into the far distances of the universe, and she's there. Her plan off against Quark, and I've already mentioned this, but her and Armin Shimmerman are fantastic together, and the two characters just bounce off of everyone. Even Dr. Bashir gets in there with her, trying to sort of get on a date with her because he's fascinated by her and he wants, to get in there with her, so to speak, for want of a better term, and it's just all played very well. This is a really good episode. I know it was somewhat criticised back in the day, I think because of how much time wasn't spent with Q and Vash, but it's a really good episode, strong episode. Obviously, by the end of the episode, we come to find out that the space station itself starts getting into trouble and starts getting hurtling towards the wormhole, and you're instantly thinking, well, this is Q's doing, but it's not. The actual orb that she's got, the globe thing, the crystalline glowy thing, turns out there's actually an alien species inside, and they come to realise this, the crew, at the very last minute. Dax, Sisko and that, and they beam it off of the station, it explodes, and there's this a sort of manta ray kind of alien life form in it that takes itself through the through the wormhole, back through the wormhole, and the station repositions itself back to where it was, and Vash goes off at the end, and not with Q or anything like that. And unfortunately, I believe this is the last time we ever see Vash. We don't know anything after this. But again, this was a great character, and it was great to see her back in this. She had, when she played against Picard in DS9, they were wonderful together, and she brings the same humility to the character, the same power, the same gravitas as what she did in Next Generation, to Deep Space Nine. And there's all these little characters, reoccurring characters, which were fantastic, and they could have done so much more with them. but they didn't. Now, yeah, so a fantastic episode. Really enjoyed it. And I'm going to be back again very soon. I don't know when, 'cause I haven't watched it at this juncture, but I may watch it in a minute. The next episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, which was called simply Dax. Now, I've got no idea what this episode could be about whatsoever. But I'll be back to talk about it in another episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine Revisited. A trek down memory lane. This is AJ. Hit the subscribe button. Come join the channel. Let me know your thoughts down below. And I will see you then. Take care all and goodbye.